Now, as anyone who's ever put pen to paper or finger to keyboard knows, endings are an absolute nightmare to write. Whether it's a college student frantically scribbling a conclusion to an essay 20 minutes before a deadline, or a world-famous author spending over 13 years working out how to finish their epic fantasy series, creating the perfect ending is a fraught experience. But when it comes to these video games, they took the concept of an ending and said, well, you know what, if you're going down this route, we're changing everything. So let's have a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 alternate video game endings that drastically change the story. Number 10, Baal's Breeder. Baldur's Gate 3. The above lovely-looking creature is a gnoll from Baldur's Gate 3, and in one of the game's unused endings, you end up fornicating with one while roofied up from a dark god's curse. Yeah, it's pretty disgusting, and I wouldn't really blame you if you wanted to skip ahead to the next entry. But if you are looking for context, in Larian's 2023 masterpiece, the character creator offers the option to give yourself Dark Urge. After dozens of hours of RPG adventuring, you eventually learn that said urge, which constantly compels you to kill everyone around you, is due to your character having been sired by Baal, god of murder. As reported by The Gamer, data miners discovered an unused ending in Baldur's Gate 3 wherein the player succumbs to their father's curse once and for all, and it comes with a horrifying twist. Rather than being compelled to murder in the name of their father, the Dark Urge instead forces them to breed with all manner of creatures. Displacer beasts, wargs, and carrion crawlers are all name-checked in order to create an army to serve their omnicidal dad. It's a horrifying end for a character you'll have poured dozens of hours into, and you can see why the developers felt that it crossed several lines from dark fantasy to, oh my god, we're going to be put on a watch list. Number 9, Raziel finishes his story early. Legacy of Kain, Soul Reaver. Now, the Legacy of Kain is fondly remembered by those who indulged in its particular brand of gothic fantasy. The series' signature blend of Shakespearean vampires, Zelda-esque puzzles, and glorious melodrama won the heart of many a moody adolescent back in the day, and its 2-decade absence continues to be a sore spot among the fandom. Still, it could be worse. Had Legacy of Kain's developers continued with their original ending, the series would have finished at the halfway point. Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, the second of what would eventually become a 4-game saga, sees blue-skinned vampire Raziel hunting down his former master Kain, and it's this pursuit that provides the backbone for the rest of the series, which means the plot would have been severely truncated had developers Crystal Dynamics gone with the original ending. Rather than Kain escaping through a convenient portal, as he does in the actual ending, the original Raziel kills his former master, devours his soul, and wipes out every other vampire in existence, including himself. Conclusions don't come much more definitive than that, so it's a good thing that the developers decided to keep the chase going so we could enjoy 2 more entries of high-concept vampire fang fiction. And if there are any Canaanites moaning that there are 5 Legacy of Kain games, Blood Omen 2 is being ignored because A, it's a side story, and B, is pretty crap. Number 8, asking for help cuts the ending in half. The Seventh Guest. Amidst the glut of atrocious FMV games that polluted video game stores in the early 90s, The Seventh Guest stood out as one of the better examples of the genre. Part of the game's charm was its forward-thinking inclusion of an in-game guide, the self-explanatory clue book. The Seventh Guest's puzzles were deviously designed, and the clue book offered less logically gifted gamers a chance to see the ending. Yet if the developers' original plans had come to fruition, those of us who flipped through the pages of the book one time too many would have seen the game come to a rather abrupt end. As detailed by video game archivist The Cutting Room Floor, the game's data files revealed an alternate ending that came into effect if you used the clue book too often. Well, calling it an alternate ending is a bit of a stretch. It's literally the original ending just cut off at the point where it looks like the bad guy's about to win. Thankfully, the developers came to their senses and let gamers of all IQ levels enjoy the ending as it was intended. After all, FMV games were meant to introduce gaming to a younger audience, and it's unlikely that anyone whose first foray into gaming ended with them being effectively told you're too thick to find out what happened was going to stick around with the hobby much longer. Number 7, Ellie rejects redemption, chooses life. The Last of Us Part 2. The Last of Us Part 2 is very much the odd duck on this list, as it actually has 2 alternate endings that make the story simultaneously darker and more hopeful. In the released game, Ellie realizes the depths to which she's sunk in pursuit of vengeance and chooses to let her nemesis Abby live at the conclusion of the game's climactic brawl. The original ending, however, would have seen Ellie kill Abby in the game's finale, but this was changed as Naughty Dog felt it was truer to Ellie's character to show that there was still good in her. Essentially, they wanted viewers to see her as Darth Vader at the end of Return of the Jedi, Jedi rather than the relentless killing machine of Rogue One. This ending would have also been a weird fit with Part 2's other unused ending. Whereas the final shot in the finished game sees Ellie alienated, alone and unsure what to do with the rest of her life, the unseen alternate cut had her pick up a toy for their child and head off to reunite with lover Dina. Ultimately, the developers wanted to leave Ellie's fate up to the player's imagination, hence the ambiguity of the final cut. Honestly, it's not hard to see why both endings were cut. It would have completely undermined the story's theme on the futility of revenge if, at the end of Ellie's journey, the conclusion she arrived at was, well, I just choose to be happy now that all of my enemies are dead. Number 6. Just this once, Chloe, everybody lives. Life is Strange. For a game all about time manipulation, it's fitting that Life is Strange's original ending took inspiration from one of Doctor Who's most famous quotes. Life is Strange's conclusion offers one of the starkest choices ever given in a video game. After 5 downloadable episodes worth of time-altering shenanigans, main character Max is confronted with the fact that her constant alterations to the timeline have resulted in the creation of a temporal storm that will annihilate her hometown. To save the town, Max has to let the original timeline play out and allow her lover, Chloe Price, to die at the hands of a serial killer. It's a heartbreaking finale, but there was originally plans to mitigate Chloe's sacrifice. Co-director Michael Koch revealed that the original plan was to put Chloe in a coma rather than to have her killed outright, as the writers were hesitant to fully pull the trigger on her demise. However, as he went on to elaborate, this would trivialize the finale and effectively go against Life is Strange's central theme, that choices matter, and you need to accept the consequences of your actions rather than constantly try to undo them. Number 5. Snake shoots a child. Metal Gear Solid 5. If a picture is worth 1,000 words, then this one image is a 1,006-word summary of the stupidity of Metal Gear Solid 5's original ending. In the released version of the game, precious tyke Eli flies off with the Metal Gear, the giant bipedal tank that you can see here. In retaliation for this act, the elite crew of battle-hardened mercenaries he stole it from resolved to do absolutely nothing, and thus 2 of the game's most important plot points, the fate of Eli and the Metal Gear, go forever unresolved. Unresolved, at least, for those who bought only the base game, because those who stumped up for the collector's edition got to find out what really happened to them and their shiny new toy. You see, the collector's edition came with a Blu-ray that detailed the events following the abduction of the eponymous Metal Gear. Protagonist Venom Snake and his squad of mercs track them down to an island, resulting in a huge battle that ends with the destruction of the Metal Gear. And then Eli contracts a deadly parasite, and then Snake gives the mech-stealing scamp a parting gift, which is a pistol with a single bullet. This is obviously a pretty important slice of content to leave out of the actual game, but publisher Konami had already poured around $80 million into Metal Gear Solid 5's development by this point and just wanted the bloody game out. Closure be damned. Number 4. Aton Rans' Fate. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. The notoriously buggy, incomplete launch version of Knights of the Old Republic 2 is infamous amongst Star Wars fans. However, much as the evils of the Galactic Empire gave rise to the heroes of the Rebel Alliance, KOTOR 2's unfinished state set the stage for the saviors behind the legendary restored content mod. This mod among mods went a long way to giving KOTOR 2 the ending the creators originally envisioned, but didn't unfortunately have the time to implement. By far the biggest change is that Aton Rand gets an actual conclusion to his story rather than just simply disappearing from the plot. In the restored ending, former Jedi Hunter Rand gets a shot at redemption by engaging in a duel with Darth Sion. Should Rand win against the Sith Lord, he shows up in the game's finale and escapes alongside the heroes. If he loses, however, then Rand's quest for redemption ends in agonizing fashion as Sion tortures him to death. So, if you liked Aton but weren't particularly good at KOTOR's clunky combat, well, it's probably best that this scene got cut from release. Number 3. Joker gets a harim. Persona 5 Royal. Okay, so this entry is a bit of a cheat as it pertains to the ending to a side story as opposed to the main event, but having learned of its existence, it feels too ridiculous not to include. In the original Persona 5 Royal, or Royale with cheese if you like to call it like I do, if you decide to have protagonist Joker romance more than one of the game's love interests, then your cheating ways catch up to you on Valentine's Day. All of your girlfriends decide to surprise you at your home, resulting in them meeting one another and realizing that you've been spreading your wild oats across enough fields to fill a county. This goes exactly as well as you'd expect for our protagonist, who finishes the day beaten, chastised, and thoroughly humiliated by his scorned and now very much ex-lovers. However, an industrious data miner discovered a scene that gives Joker an undeserved reward for his love-ratting ways. If you chose Persona 5 Royale with Cheese's bad ending, Joker lives out the rest of his days in a fictitious reality comprising of his perfect fantasy life. And in this particular deleted scene, it appears that Joker's fantasy is to be the king of his own willing harem. As all of his girlfriends forgive him for his cheating ways and say that it's okay for him to be with as many women as he wants. It's not hard to see why this scene was deleted. Watching Persona 5's female cast throw themselves at Joker is deeply uncomfortable, and Joker comes across as a creepy misogynist whose ultimate fantasy involves objectifying every woman in his life. Not a great look for a self-proclaimed hero of justice. Number 2. Yennefer betrays the Lodge. The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt. While The Witcher 3 is undoubtedly one of the best threequels ever made, its depiction of Yennefer, protagonist Geralt's on-again, off-again love interest, is one of the game's weaker aspects. Developer CD Projekt Red wrote themselves into a corner with regards to the raven-haired sorceress. After being left out of the previous 2 games, Yennefer had a lot of ground to cover in order to garner gamers' affection, especially as she was competing against Triss, the lovable, loyal, and utterly fearless sorcerer that Geralt had spent the past 2 games romancing. To give Yennefer even a fighting chance of winning the player's heart, CD Projekt needed to make her as likeable as possible. So it's little wonder that they left out a scene where she betrays her friends into an early grave. Modders Glassfish and Exlatalis discovered an unused scene in the game that would have made loving or even liking Yennefer almost an impossible task. In this scene, Yennefer asks her fellow sorceress to assist her in locating her lost adopted daughter. They agree to help her and perform a ritual to locate Yennefer's wayward progeny, only for the ungrateful sorceress to betray them to the invading army after she's located. And the end result is 3 captive and soon-to-be executed witches and 1 shell-shocked player. Yennefer's justification for doing so, that the woman may have wanted to use her for their own schemes, feels extremely flimsy and does little to justify her complicity in the brutal deaths of her fellow magic users. And number 1, Master Chief raids the Lost Ark. Halo 2. Has it really been 20 years since Master Chief promised to finish the fight? Yes, 2 decades have passed since Halo's olive-shaded protagonist uttered the series' most infamous lines possible, but had things gone to plan, he'd have never actually uttered those 3 little words. As it turns out, Halo 2 was indeed meant to have a proper ending. Master Chief was originally supposed to team up with Halo 2's other protagonist, the Arbiter, and fight through the Ark of the Covenant, here imagined as a giant space station, not a face-melting box. There they'd fight and kill the Prophet of Truth, effectively cutting the head off the alien fleet invading Earth. This ending got far enough along for dialogue to actually be recorded, but due to time constraints, Master Chief and millions of Halo fans had to wait until Halo 3 for him to conclude the conflict. Given that Halo 3 saw the above events actually occur during its runtime, had Bungie managed to squeeze them into Halo 2, then the sequel storyline would have been significantly different. Given that, maybe it's for the best that Master Chief didn't terminate the tussle at the end of Halo 2. After all, killing off the evil authority figure in the middle act didn't exactly work out well for a certain other sci-fi trilogy. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 alternate video game endings that drastically changed the story. I hope you enjoyed that, and let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. If you want to chat to me further on social medias, you can do so by going over to Instagram and AX, where I'm at RetroJ, but the O is a 0. Hope to see you over there, and I hope you're treating yourself well, my friend, because you deserve the bloody best, alright? Big love to you, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.